the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampirism, and there's a host of damned souls at Pelham House.
Thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, this is Irene Block, the host of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network cross station. And Mark's not with me tonight because he's a bit busy. He's had a lot of work to do and can't make it. So I'm here with another one of our radio hosts from the actual network, and that is Steve Ward.
Irene, it's great to be here. And for those that may not know, my show is the High Strangeness Factor.
That's right, and I was just going to mention that, Steve, but you've done it for me. It's one of our most popular shows and plays out 24/7 all through the week, literally on just about every platform, including Amazon. So, but the actual release date, the day we actually put the show out, is which day, Steve? Do you know?
It's every other Tuesday, and we just had one out yesterday.
So your show plays for a fortnight continuously on the loop?
Yes.
Okay. And we have a guest with us, and he's going to introduce himself in a minute because I am bone lazy. But he's with us. He also does a show of his own, or are you still doing it?
Nope, the show concluded in December.
Okay, I correct that. He did have a show of his own called Task Force Griffin.
Yes.
Task Force Griffin, yeah. And which I'm afraid is not on anymore, but he does, and you can hear him on the Mack Maloney show, Military X-Files. That also plays out on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, along with Steve Ward. So, that's Commander right. Cobra. Yeah, that is right, isn't it, Steve? I'll cut that bit. So, Commander Cobra, you're going to tell us about yourself, or do you want to speak about what Commander Cobra's up to, Steve?
What he's up to? Now,
what he gets up to?
Well, he's usually on a secret mission. So let's have him introduce himself first, and then maybe we can trick him into revealing some of his secrets.
Before you do, Cobra, I've got to tell you, you're making me have a very hot sweat here.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Well, I tell you, it is not a midlife thing, I tell you. I am absolutely sweating, and I'm going to fan myself now because just hearing your voice is doing my brain in. Okay?
Well, thank you very much, Irene.
Oh, God. Do you know...
That's funny. She did say the same thing about my voice.
Oh, well, I swoon over the both of you. I really do swoon over the both of you. You know?
Well, I've met Steve. I can understand you're swooning over a Switchblade.
Oh, yeah.
He's like a teddy bear.
Is he?
Oh, yes. He's like a teddy bear.
Yeah, I can imagine. He looks like a teddy bear. Okay, if you want to tell us a bit about yourself, Cobra, that'd be great.
Well, thank you very much, Irene, and thank you for inviting me to come on tonight. Hopefully, I will fulfill your needs as well as your audience's needs.
You shouldn't have said that. Now I've got to fan myself again.
I'm glad that I can provide the cooling breeze that you need.
If you guys need a moment alone, just let me know.
Well, as you said, I ran my own show, Task Force Griffin, for a little over 6 years, about 6.5 years. And it was a great run, but kind of in a combination of current events as things that are going on around us, as well as recent new work demands. I really was having a difficult time keeping the show in the kind of quality that the audience, very, very loyal audience, and I really owed them good shows. So I really put the effort into making this last year as strong as possible. And it got really great support. And I didn't want to be the singer on stage when my voice was no longer carrying the song. So it was time to move on. But I still keep in contact with a great portion of the audience that I got to be very good friends with over the years. And my show was, it was a combination of a lot of parts of paranormal events, as well as I tried really hard to find people that were doing work and research in a variety of areas especially in the military and in aviation, which is what my background is here in the States. Mm-hmm. So it was a great run, and I met a lot of wonderful people, and I was able, I think, in many instances, to bring to people things that are connections. There was a great show from a British historian in the 70s and 80s called Connections, where he would take history and events, epic point in history, and show all the connections that particular point in history had to us today, why it caused certain things to happen. And I always enjoyed that particular program, as well as the concept of mixing various subjects and how they wove together, because I'm convinced, and it's been spoken about many times on Mack's show, that the paranormal events that go on around us are much more connected than the various areas where some people are very interested in ghosts or hauntings, and others into UFOs and extraterrestrials or cryptids. There seems to be a lot more overlap, a lot more crossover, a lot more interconnection on it. And I think that's becoming more apparent as each day passes.
Yeah, there was a person, I can't remember his name now. Oh, Barry Taff. No, it's not Barry Taff. It might be Barry Taff. He wrote a book, UFOs Above, Ghosts Below.
That's him.
Is that? I never read it. I haven't read it. Well, I know he wrote the book.
From what I recall, hearing him, I think he comes from that general perspective that
there's a connection.
Commander Cobra and I have talked a great deal about researchers like John Keel and Jacques Vallée and so forth. Mm-hmm. And there have been many researchers that have sort of trended towards something more perhaps paraphysical, but certainly seeing as he was just saying, this sort of overlap where it's very hard to separate these categories and not see the connections between other aspects.
I would tell your audience, Irene, to take a look at Paul Eno. Paul just celebrated 50 years of various types of research and programming that he has been involved in. In Light Switch, they have become very good friends with because of the show, and that's one of the great things about the community that things like Paranormal UK Radio provides. I think it is a great ability for people to connect and discuss. On live shows, you often have the chat rooms. There's ways for people to email back and forth to get those connections. And Paul, I found to be one of the best. And of course, he brought his son into the business as a family business. Both great researchers, both great broadcasters, and of course, I have to give a tip of the hat to Mack. The whole reason that this got started is because back in the day when Mack started doing programs,
he asked Mack Maloney. You're talking about. Yes.
He asked me to come on his show as a guest. Back in those days, I was Commander X. And
no!
Yes, I was Commander X back in those days, and we would have stayed with Commander X, except that Commander X is actually trademarked by someone out there. And who got in touch with us to let us know that he was not authorizing the use of his Commander X name any further. So Max said, well, you have to come up with something for the future, and that's where this Commander Cobra business came up, which is a play on my call sign, which many people in the military, especially aviators, have. Not very common in Britain, but very common in the U.S. and Canadian side. It must be a North American kind of concept. Yeah. So many times, especially in the live show format, you have a guest and the guest doesn't show up. And it got very frequently. I was kind of like the on the short list for Mack's then producer to give me a call and say, Cobra, we really need you to get on the show tonight. Can you carry us for a few minutes while we're trying to bring somebody in for the second hour, because everybody had dropped out. So we had great fun, and that's kind of how I got started, pointed towards my own show. And
what might be fun is if you tell us how you first crossed paths with Mack and how the friendship developed.
I love Mack. He's beautiful.
So Mack Maloney, a great writer. He writes military techno and science fiction primarily. He's done some non-fiction work in there as well. But I had started reading Mack's books very early on. My favorite out of it was the first one that I picked up his called War Heaven, which is a really kind of fun romp concerning things going on down in the Nellis Air Force Base range area and the activities that went on there. A lot of fun, a lot of good action that was written into it. And then I picked up his Wingman series. In the back of Mack's books we used to have an address that said if you want a free T-shirt or a free bumper sticker, just send a self-addressed envelope, and he would send it back. So I did that.
Wait a minute. What did you want? A bumper sticker or a T-shirt?
Neither. I wanted him to get accurate on some stuff. So what happened?
This is the good part, Irene.
He claims a handwritten letter on legal paper, 16 pages long. I believe that's a little bit of a both sides, which I believe is a little bit of an exaggeration. But it was a fairly long letter that I wrote to him documenting, and I started out with, I'm pretty sure you are a pilot, but I am not sure you're a military pilot, because for the real losers out there like myself, and I number smartly amongst them, there's certain details that just drive folks like us crazy. It's the incorrect, in a movie it would be the incorrect insignia or devices.
Cobra, why do you think I sent you that bit from my book?
I was a lovely client because you cared about it. So I wrote this letter, and I left the phone number where I was living at that time to Mack. And about 3 days before Christmas, approximately 28 years ago, Mack called me at my house, and I said, I picked up the phone and said, hello, Merry Christmas. Yeah. He goes, hey, hi, this is Mack Maloney. What's wrong with my books? And that's how conversation. And friendship started back then, and we did not actually meet each other until about in person, even though we were both from the same part of the U.S. Very, very close, in fact. We did not actually meet each other until about, I'd say, 15 years ago, in person, together with his wife and my wife, and we all met at a neutral location between the two homes, and we formed our in-person relationship, our friendship there. A lot of fun with Mack over the years.
And that's how I first met Mack, was reading his book, being a big fan of the Wingman series, and we connected on Facebook, and he must have seen some of my posts regarding the Mothman and some of the paranormal stuff, because he asked me to be on his show one time as a Mothman expert. So I came on as a guest, and then shortly thereafter I became the guy that did the Fringe Report. And Commander Cobra and Wan are the two regular co-hosts, and I'm a little bit lower on the rung. I am a correspondent, an official correspondent.
Correspondent for Mack's show, and of course for Task Force Griffin, you are the galactic correspondent.
That's right. I forgot.
Oh dear. So you've had many hours, obviously, of flying up in the sky, yeah?
Pretty close to 15,000.
Oh, 15,000 up in the sky.
Closing in on it. one of those pictures.
I'm just going to start working out now how old you are. All right, carry on.
I am rapidly approaching 60 complete trips around the sun.
Wowee.
Now, so notice Switch, how that helped cool down the heat that she was experiencing.
Well, it made her more grounded, I think.
Yes, it just brought together the kind of cooling effect.
No, I roughly knew that's about how old you were. I had that idea in my head that you were around about that age, seeing as you're now retired, aren't you?
Well, retired from the military, still working. In fact, I work as a contractor to the military in the United States now.
Sorry, to where?
I work as a contractor for the military in the United States.
A bit like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And still many of
retired, but still keeping my finger in.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving along, and those missions are also, even though you're not technically in the military, many of these missions are secret, top secret.
Well, which is alluding to is when I retired from the military officially in 2004, I spent a few years working as a contractor actively overseas. I was in the Balkans for a year and spent about 6.5 years in Iraq. And after that ended, the work that I was doing in the States was all around the country, working without giving away things that I can't give away, flying and testing certain kits on aircraft, very inexpensive aircraft, before they went up for the major test flight operations.
Yeah.
And training with the military. We could produce, which is now extremely popular. The UK does quite a bit of this as well, where they use contract capabilities of aircraft and mechanics and pilots, air crew, to provide training for the military so that the primary forces do not have to spend time away from their primary roles. So it was great work, great fun. And in my military career, I was extremely blessed, extremely fortunate. Spent a lot of time in helicopters, a good amount of time in various small jets, trainers, and got to go to places like Antarctica, all through the Pacific. Spent some time up in the high Arctic, overflew the North Pole, didn't get a chance to land at it, but did make it all the way down to the South Pole once. And we had a very great career. I was very, very fortunate in that regard, and really enjoyed myself.
So how did you initially... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Carry on, Steve.
I'm just going to ask, how did you first become a pilot? Was this a goal that you set out, or was it something that was more of a set of serendipitous events that led you there?
About the point of around 3 years old, I knew I wanted to be a pilot. And I was always gravitated towards the military, even in my youth. So I was very, very interested in doing that from the start. So my entire motivation for everything was to get to the point where I could become a military pilot. And in those days, I was very specific. I wanted to go to the Air Force because my dad had been in the Air Force. He wasn't a pilot, but that was kind of what shaped my viewpoint. So everything that I worked at was to get to pilot training, and I loved flying. I actually was flying and had actually soloed in an airplane before I was legal to drive a car with passengers. So I spent what money that I was making, half went towards future school, and the other half really went towards flight lessons. And when I was in college, I was able to get my private certificate here in the States, and then I went up to pilot training after that.
Absolutely brilliant. What I was going to say was, I've forgotten now, to tell you the truth.
Well, it's when I told
I was going to say, so you've travelled around the world, but you've seen most of it from the up in the air, yeah?
Yep. But my first assignment out of flight school operationally was to Germany. So I flew basically everywhere from Norway to North Africa, many, many trips over to the UK. Places like Skelthorpe and Mindenhall, Lake and Heath. So I had my time in the Isles. So I did get a really great chance to experience quite a bit of life connected with the flying. And in particular, the type of aircraft that I flew, I was very close to the ground most of the time, figuratively and literally.
Under the radar.
Under the radar was a big part of it, as well as the people that I was supporting, the various folks that were receiving the air support from the kind of work that I was doing, were usually trying to stay fairly low profile and under the radar, so to speak, as well. Mm-hmm. So it's a great bonding and that kind of capability. Although I think my initial dreams were to be flying something like fighters, and done that, and I was very fortunate that I got to do some training and some work in that area. I was much more like the RAF pilots that flew Lysanders and other aircraft like the Mosquito, which we'll probably mention later, one of my paths there, that were doing more undercover or more concealed type flight operations. And I greatly enjoyed that. A big part of my military career, I did 6 years, completed 6 years in the Air Force, and I transferred to the Coast Guard because I wanted to fly off ships and try that kind of work. And that's how I ended up going to Antarctica. The Coast Guard is the service that provides the ice-breaking capabilities for the United States. And that allowed me, with a small detachment of helicopters on our ship, we flew all over the Pacific, all over, in my particular case, mostly the Pacific operations, from the North Pole, high Arctic, all the way down to Antarctica.
Okay. Yeah, so you've been a busy boy, haven't you? You know, the jet pilots that fly over me, I'm not kidding you people. I live in the Glendareth Valley in Wales. Yeah, Wales. Okay, I'm from London, but I live in the Glendareth Valley in Wales, and they do all their practice flights over here. They come in twos. Yeah, you don't hear them coming. They're silent until they get over the top of you. And then it's horrendous noise. And then you think that's it, over and done with. And the next minute, there's another one. All low flying, up through the valleys of Wales and places like that. Absolutely fantastic to watch them. Really fantastic to watch them.
Well, that valley that you're referring to is a part of the training routes.
Yeah.
And when you're flying a jet at those speeds, very low to the ground like that, even with today's most modern navigation gear that's available, you're still looking for the ability to pilotage, to look outside and identify what you would have on a chart to what is you're seeing outside as the backup to still go forward with that. Although it's not as strongly emphasized as it was in my day, it's still a big part of the training. And
well, I always stand out in the garden so they can see me. They know I'm there. I wave to them. But I tell you what, the cows at the bottom of the field, they don't even bat an eyelid.
They've gotten used to it, I guess.
Yeah, so used to it. It's unbelievable. There are a herd of cows out there. They want it, nothing moves them at all. But it is absolutely fantastic to watch. And then they fly out over the sea, and there's an island out there, and they bomb the island and do whatever they're going to do to the island, It is really a fantastic sight to see. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the film Top Gun.
No, you must be excited about the new movie. The second
Maverick. Yeah, Maverick. Is it called?
Yeah, well, yes, but I believe it's correct. It is Maverick.
Yeah, can't wait. I really cannot wait to see it. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen the trailer, which is quite exciting, and that got me a bit hot under the collar as well. I do love a man in uniform.
Well, I guess you do like the older men, because we're all in that same age bracket right now. So.
Yeah, well, I'm married to one. Sorry, Brian. No, he's lovely. Anyway, what I was going to say was, there you are, flying around up in the skies and everything. Have you ever seen anything strange?
So I'm going to break this question down just a tiny bit. Yes, I saw a number of strange things, but I was able to identify or find out that everything I was looking at was with almost all certainty man-made. So I'm gonna hedge that just a tiny bit in a second.
Yeah.
But with the advances in the period that I was flying, so-called on the line, night vision goggles became a standard way that we operated. So you see a lot more at night in the dark than you ever did before. And it was not uncommon in some of the exercises in some of the areas that we were operating, even when I was doing training as an flight instructor, you would see things from adjacent military ranges and activities. As I said, with almost complete certainty, everything that I had spotted, I believe, is not of an extraterrestrial origin at the time that I saw that. What I'm hedging there just a tiny bit is that I'm not completely sure that is not without some basis in reverse engineering or some other kind of technology transfer from recovering crashed items that were able to come up with a way to work it. So I want to be as clear as possible. Recently, within the last 2 years, not related directly to my flying work, I was actually driving a long distance home. Stan Gordon, one of the great UFO researchers based out of Pennsylvania. He was a guest on my show a couple times, and I used to have great email conversations with him. Explained to me that an area that I was doing extensive work in Pennsylvania was really rivaling other parts of the United States for UFO activity. And Stan's work is very very understandable. He delineates very, very well sightings, and he takes a very earnest kind of look at it. In that particular area, on a return trip home to where I live in New England, I spotted something that does not fit, does not match up with anything that I can determine is of man-made, or I would specifically say military here in the United States activity of known type aircraft. So I'm continuing to kind of look at that particular one, but it may be my my one event, and it was a very interesting way that whatever this vehicle was accelerated and how it showed its acceleration. One of the things that Mack has often asked me, and it's a subject that comes up on the show quite often, is why would UFOs have lights on them that look like the lights that we put on aircraft to us from having mid-air collisions, and so that we can be seen and separated. And I can't give a good explanation why, unless ETs are extremely well heeled, that they want to maybe possibly not have the collision, or they want to be able to blend in as much as possible so that it's difficult to differentiate them from other vehicles that might be flying. I can't give a good explanation why that would happen, but what I saw on this light source is very much the type of light that you would see emitted at high energy states. And I've seen this happen with aircraft that we are flying now, through engine sources as well as through skin reactions. So it really captured my attention. In fact, I even spoke to Switch about it just briefly, that it had come up. Really have not been able to determine with all the open sources. Now, Mack used to get a kick out of this when I would bring this up, but many times when I worked these exercises, especially as a contractor, one of the things I would do when I was working in these different parts is I'd go to the local UFO networks that were online and see if people reported us flying in the area, because often we would configure our lights or not use lights in specific airspace where we had radar coverage and kept other airplanes out. Plus, we had the ability, with the kind of equipment we were carrying and what we physically wore on ourselves as air crew, that we could see very, very well in the dark. And this was to simulate as close as possible what we would do in combat for ourselves as well in the air, as well as the teams around. And it was always an interesting thing to me to see how well people would pick up on our activity if they would see us, and if they would report it into a UFO network or a chat room type thing. So it was a useful way to see how low we were.
And I suppose that happened quite often, did it?
There's
reported.
Yeah, there's a pretty good frequency of people reacting to it, which I think is, I think it's one of the greatest things that we're experiencing right now is the ability, just the way the show is being put together tonight. We have the ability, because of the internet, to share great amounts of information. Sadly, it's not. It's followed the path that mankind has followed in the past, where we get diverted off into other things that are shiny and grab the attention. But we do spend a bit of good time sharing information and discussing, and people find out. And quite honestly, it's I think critical, given the situation we're doing with the pandemic, that the internet has allowed some level of continued activity, continued discussion, and or research into paranormal activities to continue, because everything has just about ground to a halt. And I think that there is a reason behind that as well, but that's for a later discussion.
Well,
I wanted to interject something. He referred to me as Switch, and that's just my nickname on Mack Maloney's Military X-Files.
Switchblade.
Which is a story in itself, yes.
Yes, it is. We won't embarrass him here on the Paranormal UK radio. We'll just say that we all have comfortably landed on Switchblade.
It could be worse.
It could be. Now, what I was going to say, I think it is the second theory. I believe they want to blend in. Let's face it. They don't want us to really know everything at the moment.
I think that is a very fair assessment and conclusion. It kind of lines up with the recent retired Israeli defense minister and scientist who said that the president of the States did know, was told, and was asked by various ET presence not to disclose that he knows and that they're here. Now, that story lasted a little bit longer than others, which I think is telling. I think that that's an important thing to note. And I think it's one more source that brings us a little bit closer to disclosure. But I don't think, Irene, in your case, and I know in Switch's case, I really don't need outside validation for what I believe. I guess it would be nice to know from the standpoint that maybe it would provide us a little bit better guidance, another compass to direct us where we may go next. I think it could have a transformative kind of thing on mankind if they knew that we had neighbors that were extraterrestrial. I think that would be of great help. But where we're right now, and how things are handled with control of information. In fact, it's one of my favorite programs. It came from the UK. I watched it as a kid, and I still watch it now. I have all the shows. It's The Prisoner, and I think it is very...
That was filmed just not far from where I am.
That's where you're at. That's how I know how lovely your area is. When I was stationed in Europe, I took a trip to Wales just to go to the village so I could stand out and take a picture. Back in those days, it was still with film. For the youngins in the audience, they can look it up on their iPhones, what film is in the process of developing film.
Yes.
It really was a thing. You had chemicals and paper and silver and halide crystals. It was very, very, very neat kind of way of doing business back in the day. But, I think that information and control thereof it is always going to remain the greatest challenge within societies now and going forward, as it was in the past.
It seems to me that the powers that be have always wanted to keep us, the great unwashed, in the dark. There's always been that, since ancient times and the various secret societies and so forth. Certain information is simply kept from the masses, and if for no other reason than they just don't want us to have it. They there's not really any justification for it. And
which the biggest justification is that it allows those that control it, those that have some of the picture or most of the picture, to remain in power,
right,
or at least stay ahead of the curve, without really delving too deeply into the absolutely filthy world of politics. Here in the United States, members of Congress, both on the senatorial and representative side, go into that vaunted building and come out multimillionaires because of rules that they write for themselves that allow them to do all kinds of interesting investments and work, while the rest of us are not allowed to, don't have that same privilege. I think that extends all the way across. Now, is it something as extreme as what Chris Carter put together in the X-Files? It might be. There may be an agreement that allows certain parts of society to be used for whatever reason, with the hopes that they'll be, as we used to say, eaten last, or they will benefit from the burgeoning relationship with an advanced race of beings. It could all possibly be there. My problem, Switch, I always conclude these kinds of unhappy parts, because I absolutely despise this part of society vehemently, is that they're self-appointed. That's what drives me absolutely botso on this kind of thing. These are our self-appointed betters, and I just don't buy it.
But don't you think that, disclosure would cause total hysterics amongst people?
Okay. Irene, right now, with everything that is going on...
Are we really ready for it?
Irene, right now, with everything that is going on, everything, every sordid thing that is going on for right now in society with us right now.
Yeah.
How could it possibly be any worse?
Good point. I guess.
Honestly, Steve, 1 minute. They'll land and they'll get blamed for COVID. You know that, don't you? Straight away, they get the blame. Somebody's got to get the blame.
Could it be possibly the people in the Wuhan lab that were working on it?
No, they won't take the blame. They're blaming Italy.
Well, at least they're not blaming the bats anymore.
What were you going to say, Steve?
I think that I've always felt that, was it the Brookings Institute that supposedly did that?
So RAND that did it.
What was it?
RAND. It was the RAND study that came
okay.
Late 70s, I believe, talked about, the stock market would collapse, world religions would grind to a halt. There would be, as they said in Ghostbusters, cats and dogs living in sin. It was just...
I think, actually, I have to say, I think it's nonsense. I think that if it was revealed that their ET was out there and visiting, I think that it would break down into certain segments. Some people would still not believe it. Some people would see it as some kind of demonic subterfuge, something, some kind of a plan or whatever. Other people would say ho-hum. Other people would embrace it. I just don't think, in this day and age, I don't think would be that earth-shattering. And again, you'd still have a huge amount of people that would say, oh, no, it's just the government up to something and they're lying to us again.
I agree.
I think you very, very strongly agree with that. But I guess what I will come back to always on this, and for your listeners, if they're ever looking for something to investigate, to just read what's available online, how RAND Corporation was formed, how it came together. An amazing story. And they do some great work. I'm not taking anything away from what they come up with as a think tank. But I guess I'm tired of someone trying to protect me from myself at this point, because I can just see how things have been handled to date on the pandemic. And I give a pretty big thumbs down on that one. And one thing that I have consistently talked about on my show this past 9 months is that the impact that it had on people getting together for various paranormal related activities, which in the UK, most of Europe, and for a great part of the United States and Canada, were huge. They were huge events. And events that I think in general, even if you didn't agree with the person that was presenting, provided an incredible forum for people to do what God intended us to do with our brains, to imagine and to think and to create, not to destroy. And it's heartbreaking that we didn't have, we're going to go pretty much a year without it. And it's going to be very macabrely interesting to me how we come out of this whenever we're allowed to emerge from our holes.
Well, who will protect us from our protectors?
Hopefully ETs, but not Chinese.
Not the kind I saw in the Twilight Zone that wanted to produce that cookbook.
Oh yes, to serve man.
I'm lost. I'm lost.
That is one of the greatest of all time Twilight Zones. The aliens land. They land in New York City. They go to the UN, and they provide a book upon arrival. And people.
A handbook.
Yeah, no. They hand them the book, and the book's not translated. So there's a section within the UN that starts to work on translating it, and they talk and they say, hey, we want to bring it back to our planet, and they provide all kinds of ways for us to produce food, and all the militaries, all the governments give up their militaries and their arms because now we're actually starting to approach real happiness here on the planet, and people are getting on the ships and heading off to the aliens. And the last scene that you see is the man that's getting on. He's been kind of narrating the whole thing. They decoded the book, and his assistant screaming to him as he goes up the ramp. It's a cookbook. It's a book
To serve man.
To serve man, and it's a classic, absolute classic.
I have been revisiting some of those episodes. I've got the complete set, and Irene, I'm a sucker for commentaries and extras on any DVD, and this one is filled with them. A lot of interviews from the surviving actors from various classic episodes, and it's just great to see the way these little, actually less than half hour, about 23-minute teleplays. They preserve them with great remastering on DVD now. So they're just some fantastic ones.
It's an interesting thing you bring him up because he and his brother both were quite active. But Rod was a paratrooper in World War II and came very, very close to death in combat operations in the Pacific. And it seemed to be his greatest release for creativity and his willingness to take on almost anything subject-wise. And I think that's one of the things that you see reflected in all the different types of writing and programming that he developed in the post years. But one in particular was the soldier that could see when someone was going to die.
Yes.
Where he would see kind of a glow around the person, and he knew that they were going to die in the next battle, the next combat they were going to face. And of course, it spread rapidly through. They had to get this particular soldier moved out. And the last telling scene is when he's in the Jeep. He looks in the rearview mirror while he's talking to some people before they leave, and he sees the glow on himself, and he sees the glow on the driver, and he knows that he's next with this guy, that they're going to die. So there is an interesting background motivation with Rod Sterling in that show, and it had a huge impact on many, many of the people that came after him creatively.
Do you know, that's interesting. And
Did you ever watch the Twilight Zone?
That cannot happen. No.
No.
No, I've always been too busy.
Well, listen, you're going to have to you've got to get the set and watch some of the classic episodes so that
I will do. I will do. Are they on YouTube?
I
don't know. But then I'll give you a list of some of the top ones that you need to look at first.
Yeah, if you send her DVDs, make sure you send her the right kind for the UK. I know it's great for our masters, but before us that we can't even share back and forth.
No, I will. I'll have a look. I will have a look. But what I'm saying is, this is not impossible. What you're saying is not impossible. I can smell death.
Oh yeah, I think that there's many people that can. I can think that. Look back, the things that would go on one part of my family when there was someone in the family was pregnant, and they were trying to determine what the the sex of the baby was, and all that. And, they had a pretty high success rate making those predictions, So I think that there's a lot of that, and I think that falls into the realm of what I love about the paranormal. I think one of the greatest attributes to the people of Britain, to the islands, all of it, Celts as well as the rest that are there, is that your connection to the spiritualism of your land, of your families is very, very strong. And the reason I think I gravitate towards it is because although we both speak English, we are two peoples divided by a common language in that case of English. But I have a deep understanding when I read. But I think the same thing happens with people in Asia. I think the same thing happens for people in Africa, although it's very, very hard for me to really find translated works that explain that. But somehow in the United States, we kind of got off that. We kind of like outgrew that. That's not quite as close. Native Americans here in the States carry, I think, probably the best tradition of that same kind of understanding. And that is why I think in the UK, when you talk about things like anything that's paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, and activities, it's just not, it's just handled in a much more classy, much more mature way. Maybe it goes because you guys got
we just take it as part of life over here.
I think so. I think that's a really good way to put it. And you have the classy accent, so that helps.
Well, when I was traveling over there in '73, I visited several relatives that really rolled out the red carpet for me. But, over here, you go out to New England and you'll see buildings that are maybe 200 or 300 years old. But over there, you'd see buildings that were stamped 1327 or something like that. So
go back to the Roman times.
Yes. And of course, some of the ruins are still there that people can go see. But I think one of the points that we just brought up is that, the establishment still condemns the any validity of the paranormal, but over here, like you were mentioning, people determine different ways to tell what the sex of the baby is. People have intuitions and know when something's going to happen that's negative, or have dreams. I mean, it's prevalent. And when we had some friends over years ago, we at the house just down the street, and you get to talking, and they were renovating their house, and the blanket they put up to keep the sawdust out of the other room was pulled down. They had all kinds of paranormal activity going on when they were renovating their home. Anytime you bring up this conversation with people, everybody has had some kind of experience. I mean, it's just all part of life, yet somehow in so many ways it's just not in the establishment, it's just not talked about. It's still seen as something ridiculous, but it's just part of our life.
You brought something up there, Steve. Oh, I'm sorry, Irene. Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. So I've got a grape in my mouth.
In Mack's books, one of the things that I connected with so often was that most of his main characters have some kind of psychic ability that run through. He's been very consistent to have this kind of gift or awareness with his various characters in his books. Some as which says an intuition, a seeing of events that are coming, or the ability to crack code on things. In one of his series called Chopper Ops, the pilots are up against it. It's the do or die kind of moment, and they will them with a force that they generate. They overcome the fact that they are really out of fuel. Now, there's lots of ways you can rationalize where the gauges are indicating that you're out of fuel, and I have literally been in this situation enough times now where I've lived through it, in some cases extremely worried about what was going to be the outcome. But the gauges have certain faults in it. But what Mack tapped into and what Switch was relaying, and I think is greatly evident with most of the folks that I've met from the UK part of the neighborhood, the global neighborhood, is that you're able to transcend. There's power within all of us, because I personally believe that power in soul connection, however you want to put that, connects with everything else. It's all parts of the same capability, the same energy, the same soul, however you want to, intellect. Mack really captured that pretty well a number of times in various books, and it's something that I've experienced, and many aviators that I have talked to over the years have been through the same thing. And the reason why they think that they're still here when they should not have survived, or they were able to get through an incredibly tough scrape. And I think that that's part of it. That goes back to our all things are connected.
Yeah.
And I think that's what our computer life, our internet life shows. And I that's why I know, yes, I don't get as frustrated as I used to. I'm like you, Irene. I just accept it. It's just kind of how things are going, that I can't convince anybody to believe anything until they do.
Well, may I say, Irene, you've had experiences all your life, I presume, in the realm of...
All my life.
I haven't, but nevertheless, I'm drawn to this subject. It's a fascination I can't shake. So what I'm wondering is, for Commander Cobra, what was your path? How did you get here and find this particular interest in the realm of the unexplained and the paranormal? Are you an experiencer yourself in more ways than you just explained when you're a pilot? I've
had a couple really somewhat humorous. And again, it's when I don't forget anything. Of course, Mrs. Cobra will not agree with that statement. But on the larger scale, I have a fairly long and well documented memory. Many years back, home on leave, and I was in great physical condition in those days. Hopefully that doesn't set anything up for you, Irene. But I was out running as I normally did, and I was home, and I ran by a cemetery near where my parents live. Now, the cemeteries were something not uncommon in my childhood. It was obvious, part of the family that, you would go visit graves of relatives. It was more celebratory than it was sadness or out of a sense of obligation. It was just a way to connect with relatives. But I played as a child in this particular cemetery quite a bit with my other friends, and I never had a bad experience ever. That particular night, I went forward and decided I was going to cut through the cemetery running-wise to avoid the full run. So as I cut through, I had a very strange reaction to the environment that I was in. And all I can say is that I was put upon by some kind of entity. And it really got under my skin quickly, and it really made me quite nervous. Very uncommon reaction, or I should say very uncommon kind of experience. So much so that I found my way to the outer stone wall of the cemetery, climbed up it and hopped down to get myself kind of under control, get my heart rate, my respiration to some kind of normalcy, and continued my run along. And it really bothered me. Years later, reading some interesting works about the area in a series called Strange New England, which they have Strange UK, Strange, lots of different parts of the globe now. I was able to determine the area that I was experiencing this was a very, very storied tale of a man who was rumored to be an embalmer, a scientist. He was involved in all kinds of strange experiments. Really made the locals quite nervous in the greater Boston area. And when he died and entombed, a medical student actually broke into his crypt and removed his head, which was supposed to be very well preserved, and then was completely freaked out. Doing that act would be enough to get you concerned. Got in hysterics. He dropped the head in the crypt, and the body was reported to be seen looking for the head for years later.
Oh, man.
Now, okay, everyone says, okay, it's New England and it's Halloween tales. So I understand all those kinds of things. Great. But so much so that the problem continued and came up from time to time that this crypt was located, sealed, and then kind of stricken from the record. It's very, very hard. I know the general area where it was. It was very close to where I was at. So that was that was a very strange evening for me, a very strange experience on the supernatural side. I've had others. I've had premonition kinds of things that have occurred, but that one crossed some boundaries.
So what would it be that kind of got you interested in the paranormal? I mean, were there different authors you looked at? Were there different, for me, I started out, I was fascinated by the idea of UFOs, and I was bored by the idea of ghosts. It was a while later when, after reading John Keel's Operation Trojan Horse, where I really considered the idea that these things are actually connected. But what spurred your interest? What brought you to where you are today?
Well, I think my dad and my parents overall, but my dad was in the 60s, just absolutely consumed by the whole UFO phenomena. In fact, I think he even still has some of the LPs of the various researchers that put out record LPs.
Oh, could it be? Let me just remember Long John Nebel.
Nebel and Frank somebody. I can't remember
Frank Edwards. Yes. Frank okay. Edwards. I've got. I think I still got a scratchy LP. It was just for the audience. Long John Nebel, of course, was the great. Great announcer for WOR in New York City. He was kind of the predecessor to Art Bell and so many of the other hosts of more recent times. And there's this great record of some of the people like James Mosley, Donald E. Kehoe, some of the supposed legitimate researchers, but he also would interview the various contactees, Howard Menger, George Adamski, and so forth. Boy, I think you could find them online. There's another great resource called the Faded Discs Archive, where you can get some of this stuff. But it's just great stuff that you had access to grow up with listening.
Well, the other part I'd like to just throw as a public service to our younger listeners, LPs are now kind of coming back into vogue, but it was a major transmittal source for music and entertainment back in the less enlightened ages that we were lived in. So let's
not get into dial telephones now, but go ahead.
I remember the first phone number was Turner 92308 that I had to memorize. So that was an interesting exchange system back in those days. But I grew up with all those books, magazines that were available. The early days of the Mercury space program and Gemini were big parts of everything that was going on. And like I said, my father was really quite interested. My mother is one that they're both very good Christians. So what I mean by that is that there's an acceptance to understand that things that happen in the world don't have to be explained. To understand that, and Switch, you and I have talked about this a number of times in the past. I always find it so interesting. I think that's probably the nice word to use. Frustrating maybe at the other end when people tell me, well, it's not in the Bible, and then you point to them in the Bible where these things occur, and then they have that look that you're trying to trick them. I'm not tricking you. This is what's in the Bible. There's descriptions of all these things. There's descriptions of ghosts. There's descriptions of UFOs. You can go as far as say ETs, resurrection. I mean, there's all transfiguration. There's all kinds of things right there in that book. But a particular religious distillization of it excludes that. But yet they'll tell me that if it's not in the Bible, they can't believe it. And not to isolate anyone in your audience, Irene and Switch. It's just one of those things that I was fortunate that I grew up with parents that at least were willing to hear it talked out, to have anything brought up. And it was not incompatible that in God's universe there would be possibly other beings, other entities, and a whole bunch of things that we haven't figured out yet.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great time. For me, the 1966 South Central Michigan, we had the swamp gas sightings. Dr. J. Allen Hynek was still attached to the Air Force's Project Blue Book and had to kind of play the role as a debunker, even though he was beginning to doubt that, the standard line of the Air Force was legitimate. He began to see there was a lot to this. Well, that electrified me as a kid, to have, aliens landing pretty much in my backyard. And then following the late 60s and through the 70s, there was this great, you could go into a bookstore and look at the magazine rack, and there were these great publications. Some of them are actually pretty good. Saga's UFO Report, but then a lot of the so-called men's magazine at the time, not girly magazines, but like True, Argosy, Saga. They would have articles by John Keel, Ivan Sanderson, and so many other researchers. Even we mentioned Stan Gordon earlier. I remember reading some of his stuff back in the early 70s, and it was just a great time, and there was so much information. And now to find a hard copy of anything like that is almost impossible.
Over here it was completely different. It was very difficult to get hold of anything. Not that I did get not that I went out looking for anything, but if you wanted a book on ghosts, you had to go and really stroll through the library and try and find one. There was nothing.
Is that because you just didn't have the depth, the interest, or was there some kind of
I don't know.
Control?
No, there was no control. I just think that not many people wrote about it,
You had to, I remember subscribing to some, of course there was most of these would be by subscription, the Great Flying Saucer Review, which was a British publication from 1955 on. And you can get a lot of those on Kindle through Amazon all the way up to the year 2000 for about $2.99 each. And it's a wealth of just great material. There was another one called Magonia, published by John Rimmer. It used to be.
Maybe I wasn't looking in the right places.
Well, these were not. I don't think you would have found these on the stands. These were mostly by subscription. There was another one. Paul Devereaux published a great magazine called The Ley Hunter, Ley, but dealing with ley lines and the old straight track and so forth. So there was some great stuff coming out of England at the time, but and even a lot of the stuff that was available here, some of it wasn't stuff you would find on the newsstand. You had to be a real geek like I was, and just and back then you couldn't get on the internet to find this stuff. You had to look through magazines and look through for little ads and so forth, and actually clip out the form and send it in with your check or money order. So, but it was a great time, and I've got quite a myself and there's a good friend of mine. He was just on my show, Brian Seach, talking about winged entities. He has his huge files, which he calls the S files. I've got mine here, and we both have helped other researchers, made copies of our material or loaned stuff out, so that because some of this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, just as again for the young ones out there, you're not going to find all this stuff on the internet. Some of it is just buried in files that people have collected over the years, and it's really great when people can share their stuff and disseminate it to other people.
Don't you find that the internet, though, just oh God almighty, my throat's gone. Reverberates the same old stuff over and over?
Well, it's just that it's limited. I mean, you can find a lot of good stuff on the internet, and you can find, going through Amazon and used books and eBay and so forth, you can find some obscure stuff that's really good. It's just that, for example, my friend Brian Seach has got just hundreds of old newsletters that were devoted to the Bigfoot phenomena, stuff you're never going to find anywhere else. And in some of the, like I just mentioned, the obscure British publications, you're not, with the exception of the Flying Saucer Review, you're just not going to be able to find the text on the internet.
It's just that I've noticed all these so-called experts and things like that. They get all their stuff off of the internet. They're just regurgitating it all, And when I watch them or I listen to them and things like that, I think it doesn't work that way. Where are you getting this from? And you go on the internet and it's all there in 100 blooming networks.
Well, I think that
web pages.
That phenomenon is common to almost any subject that occurs on the internet.
But people just don't do it the right way anymore. It's hard for... I've just had no fan here, Irene, flash up on the screen. Did you see that?
Yeah, stop with the fan, Irene, for crying out loud. We must have a party line. Now, there's another one. I don't know if you guys had party lines over there in your telephone, but that's a stab from you. Yeah, we used to have to share. You'd be on the phone, and
I remember them though. I remember them.
You had to pay more money to get a private line, but you'd have some kids from God knows where just talking for hours, and you'd have to wait.
The only party lines I get now are when I'm being listened into.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
So is it what I have to ask, were there any particular, do you remember any particular magazines or authors or anything that kind of triggered your early interest or maybe that you followed later?
Not really, Steve. Although I am now a man of a number of decades, multiple decades.
Yes.
Six.
I was attracted to the covers and the the pictures that were put together for the magazines. It wasn't until much later when I basically just took over from my dad huge numbers of paperbacks, because paperback publication was, I think, one of the it was one of the greatest ways of putting out all kinds of information, much like the internet. Some of it excellent and some of it not. But they were much less expensive than hardback books, and hardbound books obviously seemed to always have an air of sophistication that wouldn't dirty themselves with some of the subjects that paperback books brought up. But there was, as you said, a number of early researchers. That was their way of getting their work out. That was their way of putting out their what they had found, what they had discovered, and what they were concluding was going on. So it was great to find later on to read. I think it led to my really natural kind of love of science fiction writing in my teen years. Asimov's and all the other classical science fiction writers that were able to blend these possibilities into a variety of ways. And of course, later on, I started to realize they were putting in all kinds of important messages in these dystopian situations that we may be finding ourselves in now. So that's I think how I round that circle. I don't really remember anything in particular. I don't have the recall, although I claim to have such a great memory for these things, as you do when to pull up the particular writers. But I do remember a number of the really great covers that just spurned the interest. And of course, you had someone that was, head was literally in the skies. So this all seemed to fit pretty well for me.
But it's funny you should mention that, because I remember as a kid going to the paperback bookstores, and I was attracted to science fiction early on. Well, I was not a great reader at first. It took a while. And I guess I was great at comic books, but it took a while for the books to come along. But I was really attracted to the artwork on the old science fiction novels, the Ace Doubles and all that stuff. Boy, it was a lot of really great artists, and I've got a few collections of magazines, books, and so forth that have collected the old art, and even goes back to the old pulp magazines of yesteryear, and some of the really, really fine artwork that was done for those covers and some of the interior illustrations. I wonder, maybe you did your show for about 6 years, and Task Force Griffin. There must have been some guests that really stood out for you, and not necessarily in the realm of the paranormal, because I know you kind of branched out quite a bit. What comes to mind as some of the really interesting guests that you had?
Well, for me,
yes.
For some of the names that come to mind and some of the really cool shows that occurred, John Lear coming on was phenomenal for me. And just to put it quite bluntly, the friendship that he was willing to extol on that, he knew me from nowhere. I just reached out to him through a mutual friend contact, and I thoroughly enjoyed the times that I had been on, that John had come on the show.
And tell us who he was, for those that may not know the name.
Well, John Lear is the son of Bill Lear, creator of the Learjet, and what many people do not know, also the 8-track tape player, which was very popular. He actually built the second item to help finance what he was doing with the Learjet program when he was building a high-speed business jet. John Lear holds every aviation certificate that you can hold in the United States, every rating that's possible. He's a consummate aviator, survived a number of crashes. He's extremely well tuned into the entire kind of UFO military industrial complex. I don't agree with every conclusion John has made that he talks about, but it's just an absolute treat for someone like that who didn't know me from anywhere in this process and have no published research or works. But he enjoyed hearing the show before that, and he came on, as I said, a guest a couple times. So John was a very special guest to have on, and I greatly enjoyed it. I got very close to visiting him in Las Vegas, where he lives, when I was working a contract out there, flying. Just couldn't line everything up to make it happen.
People may have heard him on, he was a regular guest on Art Bell's show on Coast to Coast AM for years.
And a number of other shows. And right. He is also an incredible networker of a number of people connected with Area 51, UFO community, military, government people. There's an interesting body of work that is not really well documented, that his dad's airplane company, where his dad, I think, moved on from, was involved in anti-gravity research. A lot of incredible things there. So he was one. Recently had Ralph and Marcia Ring on. He is an incredible, they're an incredible couple. He was connected with Mr. Carr, who was a protege of Tesla, not the Tesla of Elon Musk, but Tesla, where the original name comes from, the scientist and researcher, and the adventures that they had with the types of gear that they built. That was pretty incredible stuff that they've talked about, and very uplifting message and mission with them. And I'll say that in Ralph and Marsha's case, they lived in California, lost everything not too long ago, about a year and a half ago, in the California wildfires, and have relocated to Arizona. And sadly, as often happens in these cases, a lot of their papers and letters, things that were left over, have disappeared, went up in smoke, literally, from that. But it's a great connection, very, very good friendship formed with them, and had a really special time with them. Jill Hansen, that often appears on Mack Maloney's Military X-Files, had her show at KGRA as well. She's another interesting, and I consider a very good friend. A lot of fun in there. But there's some other people that maybe your audience does not know of that would be interested. Bob Zimmerman, he does Behind the Black. Behind the Black is his website. He is a science-based writer. He is a huge proponent of the commercialization of space. He does extensive reporting on astronomy and pictures. He has a great website, lots of fun stuff that's added in there all the time. Really, really cool person to look at his site, always updating with interesting stuff. Interesting background that brought him to it. He was in the film industry in California and always had a great love for science as well. And he's a consummate writer, and he has a real talent for it. Rachel Lance was on, researcher connected to my daughter, who did an incredible story about the sinking of the Confederate States during the American Civil War sub after it successfully attacked and sank a Union boat. And she solved the mystery. And for anyone who's interested in the blending and the integration of science, history, technology, and this particular young lady, this very nice young woman's work for her doctorate degree, and how she laid everything out, it's a great read. Her book is called Beneath the Waves. It was a great one that we did together.
It sounds like you had a great ride with that show.
I did. I was very fortunate. Enril Wright, the bishop, he's been on with you and I. He is a exorcist, and his work absolutely amazing. And another man that I just formed in a very strong friendship or relationship because of the show. Ron and I still keep in touch. He's retired now. He physically carries the kind of the wounds and scars of the work, but his discussion, and if your audience is interested in looking it up, his Archbishop Enril Wright is well worth going through the saved files, the shows, and tracking down. He did a very, very powerful show with me that he closed, and I greatly greatly enjoy and value his friendship, because he talks about confronting evil in a physical way. And even people that are non-believers and are religious, I think, come away from this with a great sense of understanding of what he encountered. It will make you, even if you're not a believer, you will pause, that you will at least think about it.
What was his name again? I want to write it down.
Archbishop Enril Wright.
Enril
Wright. I'll dig up the direct connection for you and send it to you. And maybe I can catch it while we're still here on air. Another one, Steve, that you have met as well is Cheryl Acosta. A great researcher, really puts the tabulation into sightings. Has produced a number of fantastic books. Her desk reference that she put out on UFO sightings and how she works it, the kinds of data work that she has done, tremendous effort that's gone.
That kind of thing is always fascinating to me. There's a lot of, well, not a lot, but there are several books out there that try to find the patterns, whether it be UFO reports or humanoid reports and so forth. So that's, my hat goes off to people that put that kind of information together, because, boy, it takes hours and hours of research and patience to accomplish something like that.
Also had Mr. Nesbitt on from the Ghosts of Gettysburg. This is in the last 18 months. Probably one of the most haunted places in the United States. He worked as a park ranger. He has written, I think, someplace close to 17 or 20 volumes on different ghost sightings and activities that have occurred. He started out as a history student that was working as a park ranger, and spent most of his career as a ranger there, then got into the business of writing and doing ghost tours. Phenomenal work that he did. It was a great show that he had with us as well. A lot of fun and easy people to connect with via the internet. And the last one that I'll bring up, just to, I could go on for this for hours because I valued every guest that I had on. I can only think of one early on. Unfortunately, it took a very strong political bend on that, and I didn't. That wasn't what the scope of my show at all. But every guest, with the exception possibly of that one, over the years was just tremendous. Some were just self-appraising, terrible speakers that I thought just did phenomenal. They connected well with the audience, and I had a phenomenal audience. They were just extremely engaging. They were interested. They absolutely loved Steve when Switch was on all his times because of his knowledge on there. And because it was a live broadcast, which was pretty demanding, it was also pretty rewarding when in the chat room, how I took questions, and when we also did them on air as well, when people would call in, to have that kind of connection, because you just knew a lot of people were interested, and they just didn't leave angry. So it was a great experience.
It was always fun being on your show, and I've been on a few shows that are live, and there's that extra, I don't know what it is, but you really you got to try to be on your toes and be on that cough button just in case. But I did want to mention you'd had Stan Gordon on.
Oh yeah,
yes. Well, his book. He's got a few out, but the one you want to start with is Silent Invasion, and that chronicles the bizarre happenings in southwestern Pennsylvania from 73 to 74. A lot of Bigfoot-type encounters in conjunction with strange lights in the sky and all kinds of other high strangeness. And we also mentioned Paul Eno earlier. And just for a point of reference, a couple of weeks ago, Paul was on my show, The High Strangeness Factor, along with Andy Mercer as co-host. And it was just a great time. I got to meet Paul at the Exeter event last year, and I've listened to him for years, and just another great researcher, and it was a real thrill to have him on my show.
Yeah, and Andy's one of our producers here at Paranormal UK Radio, and your show, Stephen, has been with us now for 2 years, you were telling me earlier.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
2 years.
Yeah, how about that?
So 2 things I want to close on here real quick. Mr. Stone is now the proprietor and director of what we call American Stonehenge, which is a very short distance from where I live in New England.
I think we've had him on.
Phenomenally fun man to be with on that great show, and just his family connection to this very intriguing and very interesting formation. That has all kinds of Phoenician connections, and I will include that Mr. Dan Brody, who is a researcher of Templars here in New England, or the descendants of Templars here in New England, various historical works that he has done, a great series of books. Those two actually know each other. It was a really fun couple weekends when we had their shows around it, and of course I'm very fortunate that even in these trying times, that we are close by, and it's a very interesting, gives me a sense of what it's like for the living in the UK to have that kind of connection, because these are gentlemen that are really quite in tune with it. And the last thing I will leave with on the guest, because I want to make sure I gave everything out correctly, it's Archbishop Ron Fayl, F-E-Y-L, and his site is orderofexorcists.com if anybody's interested in doing that. He is a very, very interesting man. And if we're lucky, Irene, maybe I can connect you guys up on email, and you guys can get together and have him on as a guest. I think you would really, really enjoy it.
I'm just looking up here at my books. I thought I had a book by him. Not sure. It was an exorcism look. No, I can't find it.
Next time you have Paul, Paul talk about his experiences as a young seminarian, studying to be a priest early on in his life.
Oh, Paul?
Yes.
Paulino?
Yep.
Oh, I'm going to get at him.
Incredible experiences that he had in exorcism.
Yeah. Okay, so I will definitely get hold of Paul. What I was going to say is, so where can people hear your shows? You're talking about your shows. You're talking about past guests. Are they archived anywhere now that you're not doing it anymore?
If you go to Spreaker.com, people can find my show under Task Force Griffin, and or Commander Cobra, and it'll come up. And that's where everything is archived and put together. And I think that's the primary source. So Spreaker.com. If you do an internet search, it might direct you up to KGRA. And that will lead you to Spreaker Connection as well. But the funny spelling of Task Force Griffin, it's Gryphon. For your audience, probably not all that unusual, since it's the spelling of it. But here in the States, it threw off a number of people.
Well, fortunately, we have spell check, But did you want to mention the Mosquito Project?
Well, yes. The People's Mosquito Project, very good friend Ross Sharp, who often is on as a special guest for Maloney's Military X-Files. He and John Lilly and Wing Commander Bill Ramsey are three of the primary folks in the People's Mosquito, which is a project here. It's based in the UK to rebuild a Mosquito fighter bomber from World War II, and it's moving along quite well. Fuselages are now being built up, and things are moving along. It's probably one of the most overlooked and greatest aircraft ever built, and one of the greatest of World War II. Doesn't have the same kind of sexy appeal that I think some of the others do, but it's an incredible, incredible aircraft. And at an air show many years back, standing with a Skymaster that I had flown in as a display, that's how I met Ross. Ross lives in the States now, and we started talking, and he got me completely wrapped up in this project about 4 or 5 years ago. I'm a life member, and I do quite a bit of work for them in trying to promote it. So I'd love if we could get just one person from your audience that looks it up and joins. It would be a tremendous accomplishment for the People's Mosquito. Easily just put it into any search engine, and you will immediately come to it. There is a number of people around the globe that are involved in this, and we really feared that with the pandemic, it was going to really cause difficulties to get people interested or involved, and it actually went the other direction. We've had a real blossoming of people that have joined, people that are interested, maybe with more time available or online more, or just looking for that thing to take up some time. And it's been tremendous. It's been an absolute tremendous.
Obviously this plane played a great part in the war, didn't it?
It was a critical airplane in the war, and it's so uniquely British in its approach, and the intrigue behind it. Its calling card, of course, is because it's primarily made of wood, with the exception of the engines and very few other parts. So it did not deplete or go against any of the critical war supplies and materials that were needed, that were being used. It was looked down upon by the Air Ministry and the government in general because it just did not seem to make any sense. Why? We're not going to build planes of wood. We're making planes of metal. So it had a couple key people that were willing to play on the margins to keep it going. And Mr. de Havilland had a team that designed an airplane that could go extremely fast with its two Merlin engines. And many people, especially starting in the UK, do not realize the criticality of aviation that the British had developed in the 30s and 40s. Things like the engines that came out of Rolls-Royce and the Merlin engine that two of them powered were absolutely a reason that the war was successfully prosecuted and won by the Allies. There's just no simple way to put it. The P-51 Mustang of fame from my country would not be the aircraft it was if it did not have the Merlin engine in it. So this aircraft is designed, it was extremely light compared to the aircraft of its time, two huge engines on it, and it was so fast it could outrun almost anything around it. So it started out life as a very fast bomber, but it's also, in all its variants, was able to provide and work in a number of incredible roles. It did everything from air transport to pathfinding to reconnaissance to night fighting as a fighter bomber, and some of its missions are absolutely storied. And I'll leave your audience with this. If they're willing to go around, they will find a story. Just Google Churchill and Eisenhower talking about a UFO incident, and they will find a story that you will find that the Prime Minister and the Commanding General of Allied forces in Europe decided they were going to cover up a UFO experience, a UFO encounter that occurred with a mosquito. So,
Yeah.
Well, Ross Sharp is a great guy, and he was on my show some months ago talking about the Warminster mystery. So this guy is, he's just very knowledgeable about all kinds of things.
And an incredibly good friend. Thanks for bringing that up, Steve.
And the shame is that it's not flying over Britain anymore.
And that's the whole reason to
Not
return
on
it.
their air shows or anything like that, no?
The only flying model that's, I believe there's one in New Zealand and there's one here in the States. The one that you did have, soon have one flying in Canada. The flying model that you had in Britain sadly crashed and killed the occupants, the pilot and the observer that was flying with it at an air show. And that's what set this back. And John Lilly, who has a family connection to the mosquito and the RAF, and is a businessman, decided he was going to try to put this together. And I'm telling you, the adventures that people will learn if they get involved and join with it, it's not so much cloak and dagger, but it's pretty close. Some of the incredible things that have occurred along the way, getting sponsorships, finding drawings and technical diagrams and documents, the building of the molds to create this. Obviously its very unique aspect is that they use plywood under pressure over a mold to form the two halves of the fuselage. Mount all the gear inside it and then join the two halves, much like people would make a model aircraft from our younger days. Again, for the young set, you'll have to Google model airplanes and model cars, and you'll see these plastic forms that we used to glue together to make representations of airplanes, vehicles, and ships.
Airfix.
Yes.
Airfix, I think it was called, wasn't it?
Not so much anymore. Not too many people do models like that anymore, but it was all the rage in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s.
Yeah, my
Good
brother
stuff.
had a few.
The other thing I'll say is if you want a great story, BBC, Between the Years, I'll give them a great plug. Their series Between the Years, The Shepherd, Forsyth's great novel of a man flying from Germany in the 50s in a vampire jet back to home for Happy Christmas. He loses his electrics over the channel, over bad weather, and a mosquito, which has long since not been flying with the RAF, shows up and brings him, and the only way he's going to be saved. It's a great story. It's a great book. In fact, I've used it when I lived in Iraq. I gave it to a number of Iraqi pilots who wanted to improve their English, because it's just a wonderful, wonderful book to read.
Can we still get that?
It's around. If you go to Between the Years and then look for The Shepherd, you'll hear it. It's free to download. And it is my Christmas Eve tradition here in the States for the last 4 years or so, 5 years. I'll have that in a single malt before I turn in for Father Christmas. Or as we say, Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. Yeah, so... I mean, that's great. That is absolutely great. I think that's cute as well, that you listen to something like that before you actually turn in at Christmas. You know...
Single malt, it's a great combination.
Oh, a single malt, yeah. I don't know. So, how much longer have we got? We've got a little while longer yet. And one of the questions I did want to ask you, right, was now with COVID and everything, do you think that reports of paranormal activity has increased or decreased? Because people can't get out there and research or do anything anymore.
I think what has come about, I think it's probably in some instances decreased. In other areas, especially in the areas where people are a bit more, let's say, defiant of it, and believe me, my heart is with that cause, because I'm not convinced that, I'm not even going to mince words. The way this has been handled has been an absolute tragedy from start to finish. But I think people, maybe with more time on their hands, have gone back, done some of that research that Switch was talking about, look into things and realize maybe something that had occurred to them when they were younger, or something that they heard from a friend or a family member, has caused them to have a deeper understanding, maybe a revelation of understanding to events that have gone on around that they maybe ignored or didn't give much gravity to. Obviously, I think these kinds of situations drive people to think what is next, what is happening around us, looking for inspiration, hope, help, whatever. So I think that there may be a parallel interest in this, that this pandemic has spawned. And if you look back to other truly, devastating ones, in our past, that are recorded in history, there are a number of events that I've yet to really see pop up with this, but show up. Apparitions of saints, angels, demons, those kinds of things that are recorded around all those other events. So I think that there may be a stimulant to the discussion and the discovery. But if you can't leave your house, and you're not leaving your house, I think you're going to not have that firsthand experience.
You will in my house, I tell you. Well haunted, this one.
Well, that's on the haunting side, but for all the paranormal activities, I think getting out. I think, as I said earlier, you're going to. It's going to set us back, those of us that are interested in this, because we're not getting together, we're not sharing information, and difference of opinion now has even further subdivided us globally, regionally, locally. Sadly, it's very, very sad that if you're not of the right mind to the people that are receiving it, a lot of people are not going to talk to you anymore, and I find that hugely insulting as well as a tragedy. It's very, very sad on that, because you'll never learn if you're only surrounded by like-minded or like-speaking people. I mean, you learn by challenging and having ideas that go, or looking in areas that you don't. And it's a sad outcome, I think, of this, which leads me to think that there's more going on here than a medical pandemic issue, and I think that that's a fair way for me to sum that.
I think you may be right. I think there's no substitute. When I went in 1976, I went to a MUFON symposium in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where Dr. Hynek attended, Ray Stanford, Jerome Clark, and that was just, there's no substitute for going to these conferences. 2006 was my first Mothman Festival, which had a great, you've got the Mothman legend, you've got the geography, you've got the history, and then you've got these great speakers and all these like-minded people that you can talk to freely without looking at you sideways like sometimes one of your coworkers might. So yeah, there's no substitute for these kinds of conferences when people can actually get together and interact.
Yeah, true. Very true. It is sad when you think about it. It is sad.
It's just another casualty of what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Another thing I have to ask you, running of the goats. Come on, own up.
I know that there's a little inside horse racing going on here now.
I'm going to preface it just that I had the opportunity last September to make the pilgrimage from South Central Michigan all the way out to the wilds of Maine and visited the compound where Commander Cobra and Mrs. Cobra live. And it was a great trip, a great journey. And it's his abode. I got there late at night, so he actually had to come out on the road with a flashlight to pull me in. Otherwise, you won't see it. So I was very gratified that it was Commander Cobra and not some person out of the backwoods like one of those Wrong Turn movies or whatever. But anyway, that's all I have to say before we hear about the running of the goats.
So. Mrs. Cobra, who I met when I was in the military, and she's a military veteran as well, as many years as myself. We always kind of had a desire and a dream to live as self-sufficient as possible, as well as have a piece of land and provide homes for animals, critters that needed it. So when we set up shop here now closer to 14 years ago, we slowly started to put things back into perspective. Now, this is a fairly old for U.S. Standings. These were, if born here in the United States, were born before it was the United States. I have a family plot cemetery very, very short distance from where I'm talking to you guys at. Where one of the internees was buried in 1790. So we have a really beautiful spot. My wife loves England, so this was a close second with stone walls and our largely forested area. So what Steve's
tell her she can come and stay with me anytime she likes.
She loves Wales, so that may occur when travel. It would be a lot of fun. Well, along the way, we've had dogs that were crossed with wolves that needed homes. Wonderful dogs. So we started out with them, and then friends of ours that have a small farm offered us 2 sheep that were a little bit too old to be slaughtered. Probably going to go that direction, and of course my wife did not think that was fair, so we picked up these 2 sheep, and that's kind of what started us. And then a friend of ours very close to us raised goats, and my wife became kind of a midwife for delivering goats. She got interested in this and was able to help in the delivery, and that brought us at one point we had 10 goats. We've lost one, but every afternoon, depending on the time of year, they come from the back pasture to the front pasture, and it's like our own version of Papillon, Spain. They're running, they hear food, gates open, and if you're in the wrong place, you can be trampled by.
And it's a great spectacle to watch in person.
And of course, everyone's involved. Our dog Bear, who has a great affinity for Switch. We have 2 mini horses and a pony, all needed homes. Our pony Teddy is one of the biggest footed small pony horses that I've ever seen, but he's a very good boy. But he can't really be ridden. He's got some issues in his back and his legs. Yeah. Make it hard. So we have that, and chickens. And our postal lady came by a few years back and just complimented us how beautiful our place was and how lovely we seemed to be, and all the nice mail that we got. And I knew she was up to something when she was talking with us. And she explained that on the route, an older woman had passed away, and she had 9 cats and 3 geese. And they had found homes for the cats, but not the geese. And so that's how we got our geese.
I tell you, they are very good guard dogs, geese.
Yes, they are. And they march around. They're very happy here. I think they think they're in charge. So that's working pretty well.
I can understand that. I can really understand that.
And the other adventure that Switch got a big kick out of was I had picked up a feral cat at one of the sites where I was working out in western Pennsylvania. And I brought her home. And with my wife, we've always had a number of cats at different times in the house. Took her to the vet to make sure that if she had any major issues, we could protect the other cats. That we make sure we get the right medicines and stuff like that. And that's when we found out that she was pregnant with kittens. So a little over a year ago, she dropped 8 kittens. So at one point, we had 12 plus cats in the house, and we found. I
thought I was bad being a lover of animals. Gosh, you are one, aren't you?
It's not helpful for the kids, so we're back down to a manageable number now.
Yeah. Oh, do you know my son was like you. He had goats, he had horses, he had ponies, he had sheep, he had everything, and he was exactly the same as you. He would take anything in. Not for food or anything like that, just to give them a home.
Well, I'd be greatly remiss if I did not explain the recent arrival of Zeppelin. Zeppelin is a 8-week-old baby pig that has arrived. Actually, they say pigs are smart. They are not. No kidding. He is one smart little.
Have you got any grass left? Because they can not go through your lawn.
Yeah, I've got it fenced off pretty well, but they do eat pretty quick.
Yeah, they eat everything, literally everything. They're worse than goats, I think. He put 2 pigs up in his garden. He didn't have a garden after a little while. He just had a mud patch.
Yep.
Now, I didn't get to meet Zeppelin.
No, Zeppelin just arrived. Zeppelin's been here only a short couple weeks.
And if you're lucky enough, as I am, when we do Mack's show, we do it on Zoom, so we can actually see each other. Nobody else can, of course. But every once in a while, one of the commander's cats will come up very affectionately and just kind of fall all over him. So.
Oh, that's nice. I love animals. I really do love animals. Don't like people, but I love animals.
Yeah, I'm generally fall in the same category, Irene. I find that I rarely meet an animal I don't like. I can't say the same thing about people, and I'm sure they feel the same way about me.
Yeah. So what are you going to do now? What are you going to move on to now that the show's not going anymore? Are you going to tell us or not?
Well, I'm interested in trying to do a little research, but I find that my greatest talent is connecting up people, networking them to further information, to further exchanges. And so I'm going to continue to work really hard at that. People that were prior guests, people that are guests or friends of guests that I've had, they get in touch with me, and I try to connect them up with the right kinds of sources. Mm-hmm. And my interest is not waned at all in this. Just the amount of effort that it took to do a weekly live show, and really be prepared and really work with the guests so that everyone came out on top, starting with the audience. I just couldn't keep up with it, with the level of new job, current job engagement requires. So I'm back to a very demanding work schedule that way. So something like this, coming on, guesting, talking, introducing people, making that connection, that'll probably be my, for a bit, that'll be my primary way of doing business. And then whatever we can cook up, I'd love to maybe put some good programs together every maybe 3-4 times out of the year, really produce some good stuff and get it out there. But it has to be of quality, that I'm giving the right kind of time and dedication to it.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Have you ever thought of writing a book?
No, not yet.
No?
I've got a great kind of like action novel that I've always been working in my head. But who knows? I never say never.
Well, mine comes out very soon, Operation Paris, everybody. But it's an easy to read novel. No long words. I'm not very good on long words because I get tongue twisted. So it's an easy to read novel that most people can understand. That's what I've tried to do with it. And hopefully it'll be out soon. And then I'm on to the next one, Operation Russia.
Yeah, I look forward to reading it.
You'll laugh at them. Steve's got a copy because I sent Steve a copy so that he could read it. And I'm dreading what he's going to say about it. I really am. It's not formatted in any way. It's not been edited yet. And it's all English spellings. So don't think I spell wrong.
Just hope you don't see it at the booksellers with my name on it.
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
No, I trust you. No, it's...
looking forward to it.
Well, there's a lot about the DGSI in France and KGB in Russia.
You promised there'd be some risque parts in there, so that's what I'm looking forward to.
I think I tried to count them, I lost count.
I'm going to highlight them, and make notations.
Do you know,
so.
To tell you the truth, my sons will not read that book. I gave a copy of the first book I wrote, The Psychic Spy, to my son. He got to a naughty bit and he said, I couldn't read anymore, Mum, I put it down. I'm not reading that.
That's something your mom wrote. I mean, come on.
Yeah. He said, I don't want to see my mum in that light, he said.
Yeah, that can be a little, offsetting for that. Irene, what's ahead here with UK Paranormal? UK.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. We're thinking of doing live shows, but we haven't got it off the ground yet because we want to do both platforms. What platform that we've got now where we're broadcasting out on our own server plus other servers like Amazon and things like that. But also we are thinking about doing some live shows or starting, it's just working out how to do it without everyone treading on everybody's feet because we've got quite a few shows in the network. And the further I can get it, the better. I'd love to push it towards FM radio and so people can listen to it in their cars. Mind you, they've got internet in their cars now anyway, so a lot of people do listen to it in their cars. But you know what I mean? I just want to get it as big as I can. But it's difficult because I have other things to do at the same time. It took me years to write that book. It's not that many pages. But it took me 4 years because I just didn't have time to write it. And then when I went back to it, I'd forgotten what I'd written and I had to keep rereading it to see where I got to. Yeah. Steve, were you going to say something?
No, I'm listening with rapt attention.
Are you?
He's such a good schoolboy.
He is, isn't he? I had 2 years tomorrow. I can't believe it.
How about that?
Do you know? Yeah. I'm so proud of his show. It's one of our better shows.
Well, I really appreciate you. It was through Mack Maloney that this kind of serendipity struck. I was on with with I think it was Juan, one of the other.
Juan, yeah.
Yes, Juan, and
Juan,
Commander Cobra couldn't make it, so I filled in the slot, and I believe it was you and no, let's see, was it you and Mark? Yes. Or maybe, I don't know if Andy was there or not. But anyway, we're trying to talk about Rendlesham, and it kind of went horribly awry somehow. We got on all kinds of other
I'll tell you what, it really did, didn't it? You know, everyone was all on top of each other. There was so much excitement going on. But it was a good show. It was a good show.
But you wanted to talk the next day or two. You wanted to talk to me, and I thought, what did I do wrong or whatever? And you offered me a show, so I ruminated on it for a while, and Mack encouraged me to take it, and so I did, and it's really been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. It is fun doing this. You know, it's takes up a lot of my time, but especially Mark's. It takes up a hell of a lot of Mark's time.
Well, it's a great way. I mean, this is your our hobby, interest, you know, and fascination, and you get to talk to people that share that interest, and you just kind of let your natural curiosity take you, and you end up having a good show out of it.
Well, the weird thing about it, you know, it's all about the paranormal. You think that people would say, okay, sway with the fairies, but it keeps you grounded to a certain extent.
Very true. And where would we be right now, pandemic situation, worldwide situation we are, if Paranormal UK, Mack Maloney's Military X-Files, and all the others that are out there weren't operating?
That's right.
You know, and now the level of exchange, the level of interaction that occurs, you know, people that can write emails to you concerning what they've heard on the show, the connections that come up with it. It's really shrunk down some of the ways of broadcast capability. I share with you, Irene, I think it would be really great if you were on terrestrial radio broadcasting off the tower going out. I think there's a certain romantic as well as really cool cultural connection to that. I think that would be great if that happens, because I think there's a lot of people that will always connect that way to radio through a set. So I hope that it does happen. And in the world we live in now, it's pretty crazy that you can almost listen to any radio station in the world, because almost every one of them has a internet broadcast capability. So it's what I spent as an amateur radio kid growing up and shortwave ham listening around the world. Now I can do with the ease of keystrokes. So pretty cool.
Yeah, well, that's my aim. That's where I'm heading for.
Well,
and I will get there. I will get there.
Yes. And thank you very much for having me on. It's a real honor to speak with you. I'm not sure if it's honorable with Switch, but we'll figure that out.
Well, I was very pleased that Irene asked me to be on with and have another chance that we could talk, Cobra.
We were gonna surprise you.
Well, as soon as the Skype connection makes connection, you can see my smiling face up there. Yeah. My handsome countenance.
Yes. Yeah. What a way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see him now, right in the center. Yeah. Scowling. You look like you're scowling in that picture.
Very serious.
That's the sunlight was in my eye.
Ah, it's not your fault.
It was an inadvertent Clint Eastwood squint.
Very serious. Very serious.
Wow. I see. Well, anyway, thank you for coming on. And that's the end of the show. That's the end of the show, people. You can find us on Spreaker, Paranormal UK Radio Network server, on the WW whatever. Everywhere. Just about everywhere. I can't even think now. And Amazon. Listen to us through Alexa. She loves it, I tell you. On the Amazon podcasts. Okay, that's it. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. Okay, finish. Bye. 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 Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.